Exodos is the title of Sebastian Salvo's latest solo exhibition, uncovering his fables in a harmonious totality. The paintings are rough, warm, and glowing, some of which are strikingly similar to the late Rembrandt. It's really amazing how almost the more the eyes are subdued, the more expressive they are. For 3 years, Salvo studied with Odd Nerdrum, whose timeless pictures inspired his pupils' way of employing myths and archetypes. Outsiders is a recurring theme in Salvo's work, best described as dreamlike visions grounded in the classical understanding of the human figure. This exemplifies some really important things to consider when you're painting. It's again the immense importance of the contour line. You see that the whole dress is, I'll bet you 5 cents, it was much more detail, much more description of drapery, wrinkles and all that going on, but he tones it down and focuses on the whole unity of the whole figure, almost like it becomes one big form. Again, that's a Greek way of thinking. You have to know what to tone down, and generally he has always to choose focus. The focus is the eye, so he tones down the air so it's almost flat. Of course it's not. He focuses on the contour line. That makes the eye much more potent. And you see another thing that it does that could equally could fast become a problem would be to explain too much of the hair. He doesn't. He tones it down so it doesn't compete with the face. This is amazing. You see, no real description of form. This is all quite calm, although the most important things are indicated, and we are really drawn to this thing going on here. And one thing is that this dissolving of line really creates this sense of movement, but you see it also here very clearly. Same thing as you've seen it, you can see in some of Munch's work and Nerdrum's work, obviously, that the hand is not caught by the line, but it's moving. And you see the way he's adding almost some kind of a smoke here, which gives this sense of movement, but suddenly with a solidity, so that he is beckoning you to follow him, because he can lead you on this path. Self-portraits are at the very heart of Sebastian Salvo's imagery. He places himself in the role of the eternal wanderer, inviting us to partake on his journey, encountering Dionysian maidens of every kind, from water nymphs to raving, frenzied maenads. As a painter, Salvo has taken great interest in the fierce competition among craftsmen in ancient Greece and 15th century Europe. Competing by imitation, he draws inspiration from living as well as historical painters, be it Nerdrum, Hertervig, Titian, or Greco. Whenever you create a story, you really have to know what is at stake here. So you have this group of people coming carefully, seeing what kind of barter they can make with this man who's obviously quite self-sufficient. And you see how he and she jump out more as individuals, but if you look at the whole group there, they're melting together like one whole organism. So that you see that they, as a whole group, are dependent on what happens in their encounter with this man. And it's also a very good illustration or example of how you have to manipulate to get the point across, the point that you want to get across. The flame should naturalistically be much lighter. The reflection is actually lighter than the flame itself. Of course, there's another light coming in, some moonlight or something like that happening, but this is even lighter than the actual flame itself. And also you see the way he's applying the strokes doesn't describe the skin, it describes the flickering, the shock of the light. And you can see that also further up on the arm there. And this is fascinating, that suddenly he's using the strokes to indicate the movement of the light. So even though the form goes like this, he really builds it up with the strokes. And you can even see it here. The same activity. The light comes in and makes it vibrant. And those two are the most vibrant, in terms of how they're painted, the most vibrant figures. So they become the main characters. They are presenting, or she is presenting herself as a possible wife here. Crafting a story, there's a central principle with Aristotle that you really have to consider and that you see in this image. It's this thing about the past, the present, and the future. So you don't have to have great drama, but you can have sort of more, let's say, naturalistic elements that indicate that something has happened. So there is, again, this sense of movement. Like the glasses lying there, that he has dropped somehow at an early point, obviously in his distraction. Or the ashtray here with the smoke being put out and the smoke still coming up. And things like that tell us about his character, about the psychological intensity of what is going on in his head. So this is the poet. He's thinking, has this reference books there, things he's written before, and what he's writing about now. So here you have sort of at least the past and the future, and I guess you could say the present here in the cat. And that is really really fascinating how you can use purely physical elements, also like the leg there and the arm there, sort of starting to form a wheel, or creating that movement, which gives you a sense of something going on in his mind. Think about early Edvard Munch when I see this painting. It's very similarly painted. And another thing is really which is really important, is the contrast hierarchy. So you can see that when he's following the line all the way down here, sometimes there's a great shock and sometimes it melts completely together. And in that way, he ensures that there's a connection between two things that are of quite different color. So they're not too separated. And also, he tones down the cloth to have focus on the body. But there's still a fair amount of contrast here. So why does that how can he still get contrast, focus on the body? Well, this is thinner and less active actually, and you see the way it's building up this that says, look at me, it's very active, it draws your attention. It's such an important thing to realize that, of course, you are concerned with things like the rhythm of the contour line. But you also need to see where these two surfaces that are meeting, sometimes they crash a little bit, and sometimes they almost melt completely together. So you get this pulsation between contrasts, melting together, contrasts, melting together. So you get this harmonious contact between very different elements. And not explaining too much either. And this, you see how he focuses on that eye? There's more contrast around that eye, but even that is not as clearly defined because it would jump out of the context. But it becomes clear also because he tones this down almost to the point where it's almost not described. Right? So this undoubtedly is the focus. In short, a major thing is to know when to let the line bleed, when to have contrast, so you get that organic totality. Visions, dreams, and personal experience are all at play when Salvo is telling a story. But it is not his story. It is the human story, the one we all know and will always know to the end of time. And when he is able to capture the character in the face, Salvo's paintings are competing alongside the masterworks of history. Sebastian has really taken Aristotle's advice here. You use familiar stories, so you could say familiar fears, being cast out from the group. And that is something that really triggers your emotions. Thank you for checking out this video from the School of Apelles. To watch the full video and access our premium library, go to caveofapelles.com/subscribe and become a $10 patron. That's caveofapelles.com/subscribe.